The bigger the sword, the more space you need, so wielders as Zweihanders, you must take heed. Whether practicing HEMA or playing a game, using different swords is not always the same. Today, we're going to talk about swords and space. As in space of your room, not outer. You get what I mean. Hello again, friends. Lauren back with you. Last time we talked about Montante's Zweihanders, a bigger boy here. This nice big sword. And I said we would talk about some techniques. I'm using it in future videos. And so I've been trying to practice and really get those techniques down. I want them to look good on camera. Where does the problem come into it? Well, even though I was practicing outside, garden/yard space, out behind the house, it's still kind of small, and I hit things that I was not intending to hit. Try to push the pellet out of the way, try to move away from it, still hit it. Hanging planter with dirt, no plant in it yet, thankfully, for the season, but hit it, dirt everywhere, just spraying all over the place. And these aren't intention, but if you just move in the wrong space, you just move a couple inches when you're doing your footwork the wrong way, suddenly the tip of the sword hits something you don't intend. And it really gave me a thought when we start talking about how to use swords, big swords, two-handed swords. We really need to talk about space. How much space do you have? And you probably need a lot more space than you think. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at the longsword, and we're going to look at the Montante, and we're going to compare the two. Move slowly to make sure that the focus stays. Okay. So, I pick up this sword. Here we go. Two different swords. We can see size difference. Big size difference. And they're both for two hands. Right? So, what we call longsword and what we might call great sword. Both for two hands, but different sizes. Some different design features. And how do you fight with them? Well, very different ways. So the first thing I want to do is just revisit some longsword. And if people want, I can do a series of videos on longsword training, because you can make your own sword out of a broom handle, and you don't need as much space. But fighting with this version of a sword for two hands, a lot of push, pull. You are really keeping the focus in, cuts, thrusts. You don't need as much space. You can fight in closer quarters. Of course, if you're in really close quarters, you can do the shortened sword, the armored fighting, where your hand grips halfway up. So some people call it half swording, but the shortened sword for armored fighting, you really get that motion. So you don't need as much space. So I could practice that inside, not a problem. So on a great cloudy day like today, I could easily do this in the house. Still have to be careful with the ceiling for certain cuts. But yeah, a lot of that push-pull motion, it works really well. And that fits with what manuals teach us. That really builds on that kind of system. But if we switch back to our Montante here, our Black Fencer Montante trainer, this is used in a very different way. Now, there is the kick motion. Hard to kind of show it right now. But you've got the sword. And this is a full body motion sword. As I swing with this sword, it is here at my side. And I'm doing big motions. I'm going to move up. I'm going to step back while I do it. Even though it should be forward step. I'd hit the camera. So, come up, across, almost like a right angle, and back down. Cross, down, and I'm hitting the wall already. So you can see these are going to be big swings, and this room, there are a few things piled up on that side. So if we say that I had 10 feet across, I'm using pretty much that space. If we think about the way video games and role-playing games work, you enter a 10 by 10 room. Very stereotypical for games. But if you had your great sword, your Zweihander, your Montante, your two-handed sword, your big sword, like this, you wouldn't be able to use it. And it's not for that. It's meant for big spaces. It's meant for defending a bridge. Whether it's the drawbridge or a wide space, it's meant for open areas. It's meant for battlefields. And you don't line up in ranks. You know, if it's a miniatures war game and you have all of your two-handed swordsmen with their big Zweihanders and they're all lined up close, shoulder to shoulder, well, that's the only motion you can use this for. And that sword, if you're looking at 2.5 kilograms, 5 to 6 pounds, whatever the weight is, there's a lot of momentum. It is a full body motion. You are really getting the motion in, and you can feel that your whole body, your torso is turning, and that's how you would use this sword. So that's the first thing I want to get into, is that this sword is used very differently from what we've looked at before. Those big power moves, I need to really cut through. If you have a formation of pikes in front of you, you need to knock them aside. There's a lot of movement from the body that's going to come into it. And so you're kind of rising up and across and down. And a lot of the moves where you're moving in one direction against opponents and swinging the sword, and then turning and moving in another direction, and then turning and making the camera go blurry. Thank you. And yeah, you need a lot of space. So if your character in the game has this sword on the back, which is going to be very awkward, you're probably carrying it maybe like this, with your left hand down, your right hand, that's your right hand, and you might want it free. You can pull it into a guard position. But again, the manuals are going to tell us that this up here with this right angle, it's moving, it's up, it's hitting the wall. There's not enough room for me to use the sword based on the techniques we know it's for. It is big. Okay. At 160-ish centimeters, over 5 feet in height, it's a big sword. And if it's 5 feet in height, if we've got 48 inches or 4 feet of blade sticking out this way from my arm, and then this way from my arm, that 10-foot space, I'm going to take all of that space up. And if I'm not perfect with where my sword is, I'm probably going to hit something I don't mean to hit. And that's exactly what happened while I was trying to train. So I wanted to bring that up. When you use these swords, big swords, more space. And something that we don't think about in games, just our characters, oh, I'm using the big two-handed sword. Okay. Could you possibly hit your allies? Fellow soldiers or your adventuring party, if it's something, and you're in a dungeon, you're not going to bring a big sword like this. It's not going to work very well. Now, I know some games, fine, they're not simulationists, they're just for fun. But if your game is trying to simulate a little bit of reality into your combat system, you'll have to think about these things. How much space do you have? Are you going to end up hitting what you shouldn't hit, your friend, as you attack? It's a possibility. So, something that I just wanted to bring up. In my adventures in learning, because I'm new to Montante, I can see where the differences are. The way I fight with the longsword, and I'm very comfortable with the longsword, is extremely different. It doesn't really transfer over directly. I need to learn different techniques. So, just because we can say it's a sword for two hands, or a sword for two hands, we know they look different, we know you fight differently with them. They're functioning differently, what their purpose is. And of course, 15th century design versus 16th century design, things change. Purpose on the battlefield changes. What are you doing with it? Can you carry this at your hip? Easily. Do you have to carry this over your shoulder? Yeah. Right? They're different swords with different styles and techniques. So, when we think about games, we're going to fight differently with them. A single-handed sword is going to be used differently from a two-handed for longsword, which is different from two-handed for Montante. And that's all I really wanted to talk about today. I just wanted to go over, just get you thinking when you're using different swords, different techniques, whether you're writing a story or you're playing a game, or you want to practice and you're trying to get the right space, give yourself that space. The bigger the sword, the more space you need, obviously, but the techniques are different. The way you fight with one thing is different from fighting with something else. And your environment really controls how you're going to use that and how effective you're going to be. So thanks very much for watching. Just my random thoughts of the day. I hope that you're taking care and staying safe. Remember, likes and subscribes and notification bell if you want to make sure you know when my videos are uploaded. Right now we're doing Fridays. Fridays are a good day for video releases. And I want to say thank you very much for all the support. I think we're 3 people away from 350. That's doing really well. And again, I'll see you really soon for another video. Hopefully more Montante, where we're actually going to get outside if the weather lets us and do some swings. And we can see am I going to be as good as longsword, or am I going to have some troubles? We'll find out the next time.